Can we blame Mike Tomlin and say, yeah, you got to control your locker room? There's some things you could have did as far as disciplining him years ago or in the last couple of months. Yeah, there's some things he possibly could have done. But I'm not going to put this all on Mike Tomlin as well. Antonio Brown is one of the, in my opinion, is the best receiver in all of football. He's the hardest working man off the field. And we all know that about Antonio Brown. His work ethic is impeccable. But when it comes to being a grown man within that locker room and a leader within that locker room at 31 years old, when your teammates and you have fallouts, you find a way to get over it, and you have the goal of winning on Sundays. That's it. And when team members are calling you and when the coaching staff is calling you, you pick up the phone and have a conversation. It's expected of him because of the role that he plays within this football team. It's no one else's fault. Be a grown man and take care of your business. And I think it doesn't fall on Tomlin or Roethlisberger. It falls on AB.
Okay, that's fine. But again, the question was who's more to blame, because nobody's absolving. Listen, nobody's absolving Antonio Brown. If he was a part of the question, then I would have given that answer, because you're absolutely right. You're a grown man. You're a professional. You got to return phone calls. That comes across as very aloof, dismissive, and downright disrespectful. I get that. And Max's point about Mike Tomlin is to be validated. But I have spent years watching people go back and forth between Donovan McNabb and T.O., right? Nobody brought up Andy Reid.
Exactly.
They said your receiver and your quarterback. So I'm saying, excuse me, even though Antonio Brown is ultimately most culpable, let's not absolve Big Ben Roethlisberger as if he has nothing to do with it. You're the quarterback. You're the face of the franchise. You're a two-time Super Bowl champion. You have credentials. The future is yours. You're going to the Hall of Fame. I'm not going to ignore Big Ben.
But if you're Ben, I mean, you are the quarterback. There's so many other things that you have to do within that locker room. There's so many things that, as far as game planning and sitting in meetings, half the meetings that Ben Roethlisberger is sitting in have nothing to do with Antonio Brown. It's about quarterback meetings, and he doesn't have time to counsel his wide receiver. What quarterback has time to sit down and say, hey, listen, you know what? We need to talk about this and have this conversation. We need to break bread and make sure things. Be a man about
Dan, you got
the
to make up your mind, bro. I got to get on you about that. You got to make up your mind. And I want Max in on this, too, because here's the deal. How many times have we talked about the prima donna position being a wide receiver? I get where you're coming from, Darren, but the flip side is you know that by virtue of the profession that you're in. There are certain positions you're going to have to cater to. You might have to coddle a little bit. Think about this for a second. Darren, Max, how many times have we sat here and talked about Juju Smith-Schuster he's the number one receiver.
Yeah.
How many times did we not hear Ben one time say we should have gone to Juju every play? He said that a few weeks ago. How do you think that stuff's going to resonate with a temperamental star?
If the question is, does Ben Roethlisberger deserve some of the blame, the answer is yes.
Well, that's all I'm saying.
I think he does. Obviously, let's do the pecking order. Antonio Brown deserves the most blame, right?
Absolutely.
Who's next? Actually, next is Mike Tomlin because he's the head coach. And then thirdly, Ben Roethlisberger. He's in on it. He's throwing him under the bus publicly, all that kind of stuff. He deserves some of the blame. But of those three dudes, Roethlisberger comes in last. Like it's Brown 1 and then the coach.
But it still matters is all I'm saying, because think about what we said about Big Ben. He's called guys out. He sat up there and passed the buck.
You're right about that.
And not only that, I mean, Max, Darren, you know who your temperamental stars are, who, by the way, directly helps you look good. It ain't Vance, as good as Vance McDonald and Jesse James is or what have you. Antonio Brown has been that dude 6 straight years balling. You don't go out and say, we should have went to the other receiver every play.
I absolutely agree with that. And some of the things that Ben has done and said over the last couple of years, and as far as things getting outside the locker room at Benton, the statements that he's made, I totally agree with that.
That's all I'm saying.
But if we're talking about this one specific incident, I mean, it's hard for me to go away from the blame being on Antonio Brown and putting it on someone else, because you know the importance of this.
Put it this way, Darren.
He's the guy that they look at in that locker room as like, they put him on the same pedestal as Ben. I mean,
put it this way.
They expect Antonio Brown to be there on Sunday to play football games.
Darren, you brought up his work ethic, Antonio Brown's work ethic. It's the best in the business, right?
Yes.
Can you think of another wideout whose numbers, by the way, Brown challenges a little bit? He loses in the comparison, but all-time, who was not the most talented guy, but the hardest working guy and is therefore the greatest who ever did it, undisputed greatest who ever did it, Jerry Rice. The difference between Antonio Brown and Jerry Rice's numbers were a little better in an era that was harder to do that.
Right.
But the major difference is Jerry Rice wasn't causing problems. He was winning Super Bowls.
Time out. The major difference is that Jerry Rice had a quarterback he loved in Joe Montana and then Steve Young. In the case of Antonio Brown with Big Ben Roethlisberger, the relationship doesn't appear to be that close. I mean, can we just talk about it, fellas?
Yeah, but Antonio Brown's got a great quarterback. I mean, he's played with a great quarterback. It's not like he's playing with a scrub.
I'm saying their personal relationship with one another
make it work
appears to be lacking.
Exactly.
And
Max,
I'm putting it on both of them to make it work.
Max, you just said it. Make it work. You find you find a way to make that work, and it goes for both players. But this is the thing. Okay, you can argue as much. You two argue all the time, on and off the set, all the time. Right. But Max still shows up. Every day, he shows up. Max is going to find a way to get to work and do his job, be a professional. And that's the only problem I have, because players in the locker room always – I've played with guys who fought every day, didn't like each other, were disgusted in each other, couldn't stand each other. But then on Sundays, they showed up and they were professionals and they played the game. That's just how it works. And this is the big issue I have with these three, Tomlin, AB, and Roethlisberger. Find a way to make it work, and AB should not miss a
But nobody. Listen, there's nothing to discuss about Sunday. The fact that you weren't available for that game because of how you acted that week is inexcusable. Yeah. I'm talking about the overall relationship that exists, the dysfunction in the Steelers locker room, AB's role, Big Ben's role, Mike Tomlin's role. I'm talking macro as it pertains to this entire season. We know there's no excuse for what Antonio Brown allowed to happen Sunday in terms of missing that game. Yeah.